Hello.
Hello there.
How
I'm
you doing?
multitasking at the moment.
Oh, ooh, you're moving.
Yeah, sorry. Gotta get my family on the way to food here. So making a little chicken and some broccoli. Got some rice. You can tell me if you think that the chicken thighs look ready. So I'm gonna deactivate my video for a minute.
Okay. We've got Vanessa, we've got Peter. We've got two Tashas.
Okay. Hi, Charmaine.
Hello.
Are you at the office? Oh, you must be.
Yeah, I don't have a whiteboard at my house.
You don't have what? A white? Oh, I didn't even see that. I actually do, although not that big. I just made a PDF of the 6 or so slides if we need them.
And we have Ben.
Hello.
Hello.
Hey, man. Okay. And we'll just, yeah, still got a minute. So, man, are we gonna, will Bill, is he gonna call in at a specific time?
No, he'll join as soon. Well, there he is right there.
Oh, okay. I know, because we have him as last on the agenda, so.
Well, that's a screenshot. There he is. Hi, Bill.
Hello.
Hi, Bill, thank you very much for coming back. We won't try to take much of your time.
Okay.
We just wait, and we do have it's a 3-member committee, so we have a quorum with Ben and I. We're waiting a few minutes for Al to join. Al Fatoni, who's the 3rd member, and also an accountant. So particularly his help on advice or thoughts on these things are very useful.
Sounds good.
Thanks. I don't know if you're gonna, if you may already, you probably have them already, but I have the slides from your August 9th presentation, if they're useful to you, and like we can just put them online, share them during any questions. I don't know if you need them, but I have I have them available right here.
Okay, I have a hard copy as well, but if need be, I can pull them up and share them as well. If
I mean, the ones I have the ones I'm with separate. I have, and you may not need them, but if
Okay.
they come up or if you wanted to point to them, I can do that so you don't have to.
Okay, I appreciate that. Thank you.
So we're a little after 6 o'clock. Did you want to try and text Al just in case?
Oh. Is that from Al?
No, I'm looking now.
Okay. I just texted him. We'll wait just 1 or 2 more minutes and then go, and I don't want to keep people.
Oh, there he is.
Oh, great. Hello.
Hello,
Good evening.
good evening.
Okay, why don't we, thank you, everyone. Why don't we come to order? I appreciate everyone being able to make this special finance committee meeting. We'll open it up at 6:03 p.m. Do we have any public comments or anyone ready to any public, anyone from the community wants to talk to us?
I'm not aware of any. I would defer to Tasha and or Ryan.
I'm not aware of anybody either.
Okay, all right, so we will go to staff reports, which the multifamily trash service.
Correct. So this is just simply to make you aware of the circumstances surrounding the multi-year contract that we had with Willimantic Waste Paper. That contract is due to expire next month, November 30th. And additionally, Willimantic Waste Paper sold itself to a company called Casella Waste Systems this past July. Casella has reached out to DPW and invited us to renew or extend the contract for an additional year at the same rate. This provides them with an opportunity to fully absorb the company and make sure they get a good footing as they absorb the waste systems, the waste paper, Willimantic Waste Paper Company. And it also gives us the opportunity to maintain our rates. For DPW had informed me that, well, I should say John, you all know who John is. John had informed me that the RFP process would naturally bring an increased rate because there's a natural escalation that goes on with these trash services. So he was fine with the extension for 1 year, just to basically also give an opportunity to see how Casella operates, seeing as the playing field or the market for waste services is very, very small. When we go out to bid, he will have a better sense of sort of how they service us if he's had a year under his belt dealing with them. So we just wanted to inform you that that is the recommendation of DPW, and I would agree as well from finance. If you have any challenges or concerns with that, I would ask that you advise me of that, and then I would bring that back to DPW.
So, May, did you say the contract expires the end of October or end of November?
November 30th.
November 30th. Comments? Just a couple quick questions. One, do we, so presumably from John's comments, we don't have to do an RFP if we want another 1 year contract?
It's just an extension of 1 year of this current contract at the current rate. Otherwise, then he would go out to bid, and he had impressed upon me the small number of players. And, you know, I guess in his
Who did,
mind,
John or the company?
John impressed upon me the small number of players in the market.
That was my second question, which is, you know, when you go out to bid, usually you hope that the competition will actually result in the best, you know, at least up the best rate around, or one of the best rates. But John's
Shrinking
advice,
right in front of our eyes as of
John's
July.
advice is that it's not.
So.
But we would, I think, have to present this to the town council for full council approval, although I'm not positive. I think we would, correct?
It's not a multi-year contract, it's just an extension. And so I was of the impression that I needed to inform the finance committee, but if it needs to go to council, then I will work with.
I can check. Does anyone, oh, yeah, go ahead, Ben.
This is just the multifamily contract, correct? This isn't the contract that we have with the same company for single family trash pickup, correct?
That doesn't expire, which is ironic. I believe that one expires next year. It's on, they're not on the same year cycle.
That was
I
my
don't,
understanding as well.
is there a provision in the multifamily contract to allow for extension? Or are they is it just an offer that they've made to extend it?
It's an offer that they've made.
And we would normally, they're in cycle, like we would otherwise, if the expiration of the contract in our procurement policy, we would otherwise be going out to bid this year.
Right.
Yeah, I don't have an issue extending it for a year and getting them on the same cycle. I couldn't imagine a scenario in which we had different companies providing both services and having both of the contracts on the same cycle would allow us to bid for both of them at the same time, which
That's an
would
excellent
have
point.
to give us a better rate. There really are, there's two companies that do this pretty much, period, in this area, and it's Willie Waste and All American, and that's it. And so unless I'm missing one, that I've never seen any other barrel in front of a house in Eastern Connecticut. So besides places that do it themselves.
And that was one of the questions that I asked. It would give, John said it would give him flexibility. He wouldn't necessarily write the RFP for a consolidated single and multifamily, but it would give him the opportunity to determine, once he gets a better lay of how Casella operates in this neighborhood, if he would want to bundle it. Because he said that there is just some smaller agencies that are better at single than they are at multi, and vice versa. So it would give him more leverage if it is on the same schedule.
I would trust Ryan and Charmaine to ascertain whether the council needs to approve or not, Peter. And so I'm happy to move to recommend that tonight. And if it needs to go on the agenda for Monday, it can.
That's fine. Do you want to make that, so you made that motion to
I
approve?
made that motion.
I'll second it.
All right, so Al, any comments or anything you wanted to, you second?
No.
that?
No.
Okay. I think that makes sense for the reasons it said. So all in favor? So it's all 3-0. All right, excellent. Thank you. We now go to approval of the minutes, and this is from our September 22nd meeting. I was not able to attend, so Ben, do you want to make a motion to approve?
I move to approve.
All right, I'll second. And any comments? Changes? Okay, all right, so they are approved. Al, did you want to abstain or vote?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll abstain. Yeah.
All right, 2 approval, 1 abstention. Okay, we're on to new business, which will start with the fiscal year 2021 audit overview. Charmaine, do you want to go ahead?
So we have with us again today is the principal at CLA, Clifton Larson Allen, our audit firm, Vanessa Rizito. And she's just going to share kind of what the nature of the landscape is as it relates to the audit season for the town of Mansfield and the 6 agencies that Shared Finance manages.
Thank you
So
very
good
much. Vanessa.
Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me okay first?
Yeah,
Hear
I
me?
can, yes.
Okay, great. So I just wanted to, as a courtesy, give you a status of the audit of the town of Mansfield. So our team was out on September 7th to do the final field work for the audit. We got a number of things, but there were some larger things that we weren't able to receive from the finance department. I think, and Charmaine can expand upon this, but I think the finance department had a lot going on with system changes, personnel changes, all the new reporting for the COVID and ARPA funds. So we met, I think 2 weeks ago, Charmaine, right, to kind of regroup on what the open items list was. And there were a number of items provided to us after that, but we're still waiting for some pretty large items. So really what this means is that, you know, our staff, our team was scheduled to work on the audit the week of September 7th. We didn't get all of the pieces. So now My team is deployed onto other audits. They're scheduled on other jobs for the rest of the year. So we're going to have to fit this in on nights and weekends, coupled with the fact that as every business is experiencing, we have a shortage of people, coupled with the fact that it's a new firm and new procedures and all that. So I am suggesting that what's probably going to happen is we're probably going to issue an extension at the end of November. We have to ask OPM for an extension a month ahead of time before the due date. We're hoping not to use it, but it's sort of just a cushion just in case we do not have the ability to issue the audit before December 31st.
You're muted, Peter.
One procedural question, I guess. What's the likelihood, how often does OPM get these requests generally? Is it routine or is it unusual? What's the likelihood of approval?
It's very usual. And there's a number of engagements that go on extension every year. And that, that's why they have this, because they recognize that things happen, personnel changes, systems change. The thing that I don't want to happen is I don't want Mansfield Finance Department to just give us stuff that hasn't been reviewed. And then, we're going to have to audit the information. I don't want to rush to get it out. I want to make sure that, finance does a good job, that we do a good job, and that, we're not just rushing to get it out on time. I'd rather issue the extension and just have a little bit of breathing room.
Are there any potential consequences to bonding ability? Does any increased expenses other than, perhaps for the auditing process that this could result in? Does our delay have any negative signals to the outside finance world?
So I'm anticipating issuing the financial statement at the latest January 31st. I think some towns are late by, 3 months, 6 months. We're definitely not looking at that. So I don't anticipate. Again, our goal is to issue by December 31st, but because we have to issue the extension a month before, we can't issue it that night. There's a bit of a crystal ball that we have to have that no one has. So I just wanted to let you all know that's where we think we are.
So how long does it take OPM to issue its decision or tell us its decision?
Probably
Roughly.
within a week.
Okay. So when would you need to make this request in order to, because if it's not granted, I guess you have to scramble. Everyone has to scramble, but.
I wouldn't think that it wouldn't be granted. But we could ask for it early if you would like, and then we'd know.
What's your recommendation? What's the normal practice of when? Because if it's very likely, then that's fine. Well, but if worst case scenario they say no, then would you be able to? We need to be able to complete the audit, presumably.
I don't think there'd be any reason OPM would say no. So I'm 100%. I would say 199.9% sure that they're going to say yes. We've done this in the past. I've never had an extension not granted. I've never heard of OPM not granting an extension, and that's even for towns that are, over a year in arrears. So.
And can I just pile on to what Vanessa is saying? We're still going to operate at the full court press we're operating on right now. So this is sort of the security blanket. It was stressful enough to have the conversation with Vanessa earlier on this front. So because I just don't like to be late, but it is a thing. It is a real thing. The circumstances around, well, you all are privy to kind of the the environment that shared finance has been existing in for the past 18 months. It's been a lot. And we finally got fully staffed last week. So, and she is as lovely as she is, as talented as she is, she can't do anything for us because she wasn't here. So we're still gonna do the full-fledged, push, which is part of the conversation that I had with Peter, with Ryan, the superintendents, and so on and so forth regarding quarterly financials. We have reprioritized in order to be accurate and vigilant in the numbers to get this through properly. So something has to give. And I think Al, you had asked about whether or not Munis was the magic bullet for us to not be as labor intensive on the quarterly financials. Not yet. So we're still doing quarterlies in a very manual fashion. And that takes a lot of time, which would take away from the audit. So I made a decision. So even though we may potentially have an extension, we're not going to be 6 months in. We're not going to be 3 months in to the next fiscal year. But we do have, some things have to give in order for us to be able to put all our attention, not only to CLA's audit, but also to the audits for the state and the US Treasury for all that federal funding that we got through Corona relief funds and through ARPA. And of course on, shared finance supports the boards of ed. They got a significant amount of money through ESSER. And, every time I look up, there's a new report that's due at the end of the month, and they tell you like 2 to 3 weeks in advance. So it's just a lot. And I felt it prudent to make sure that I'm not telling you this, but that the partner is telling you what the nature of the landscape is. And you can ask as many questions as necessary, but we are doing our level best.
Yeah, and I do want to add that, CLA is going through a system change, or, it was Bloom Shapiro, but now it's CLA. So I don't know what the process is going to look like on our side. It's probably going to be a little bit more in depth. So I'm not, if it was Bloom Shapiro, I might be a little bit more confident that we could get this out. I am not as confident. So with our new system change and the fact that, we just don't have the manpower, woman power that a lot of firms are experiencing right now, I'm just trying to be practical and, just as a courtesy, inform you of this early enough so it's not a surprise.
No, I appreciate that. Are other questions and comments? Ben?
But just so I'm clear, that the delay is because primarily of sort of workforce issues in the finance department not being fully staffed, combined with our switch to the new financial system, combined with the reality that the finance department, while not on the ARPA stuff that we are worrying about, but on the ESSER stuff for the boards of ed, has been very engrossed in reporting requirements that didn't exist when the funding came in. Is that correct? Okay. And if there's no other factors, there's no concern that you have, Vanessa, about any of the issues besides that's what's going on?
No, I think it's just a resource issue in the finance department and just a ton of change.
Okay.
Right.
Well, yeah, I mean, if there's no implications besides a delay, I don't see any issue with it.
Al, any?
Yeah, I just wanted to chime in. As you all know, I'm part of the public accounting world, and I certainly understand what Vanessa's firm is going through. We don't do municipal audits where I'm at, but so I'm not really sure how that all works as far as getting extensions. But I can say, from Vanessa's point of view and being a, a CPA myself, you always hesitate to put out a statement, a so-called unmodified one, where, you're putting out to the world that, or to the reader that, they can pretty much rely on the statements the way they are, that, they're free of misstatements and all this garbage stuff that we accountants throw in. And I can understand the hesitancy if they don't have everything about putting out such a report, So I think I agree that it's, I don't find any reason to balk at this. I think that it's making sense to me. And I think that I agree, let's not rush the process if it's not going to work. I just want to make sure, though, that once this goes on extension, that we don't sort of fall off the burner, so to speak, that we stay on it. And I know you have staffing, you have other jobs, and, and that's the way it is. But if we can sort of still stay there, even for December or January deadline, that would be really great in my view. So.
Yeah, my goal is to issue as soon as we can. So, it might be January 10th, it might be January 20th. I mean, it still might be December. I don't know, but we'll issue as soon as we can. We won't wait till the last minute.
Yeah.
And that's a good point, Alan, as well. I mean, it's Vanessa and Charmaine, told us that this is both can be common, and there's no financial reputational issues to be concerned about. What would be a little worse is if we had to restate because we rushed. That's not the end of the world either. I assume that's to be avoided, even far more than a short extension if necessary. And in terms of the federal requirements that Charmaine and Ben referred to, audit requirements, are we gonna have any problems meeting those deadlines, or would the extension apply to them, or they're just not due by December 15th?
No, these deadlines are, which has taken a great deal of my time because I'm responsible for those. One's due on Friday for the state. The blessing for the US Treasury is that they extended for ARPA, the initial reporting to 2022, the spring of 2022. They originally wanted it on the 31st, and I guess there was uproar and someone had a reflective moment and they pushed it back. And then the ESSER reports and things that are due, and these are new reports. These aren't even reports that the superintendents are familiar with. Those are due on the 29th. So in their state meetings that are taking place tomorrow, in order to make sure that all the SBO, school business officials, know what we're doing for these reports, because the Fed want them on the 29th. So.
Okay. Unless there's other questions, comments, Charmaine and Ryan, is there anything that you need from us? I don't think we need to vote to approve anything, but this is very helpful to know. And I know, this is, more information or additional information confirming what we already know, which is how stressful the last year and a half has been at finance for all the reasons that you guys all talked about.
Yeah, I think here we just wanted to make sure that, you were fully kept in the loop, what was going on. I mean, we've been talking about a lot of the issues surrounding the transition and its, various complexities for months. And I think, as Charmaine herself has said, it's not in her nature to want to be in this particular situation, but sometimes factors beyond our control kind of dictate the circumstances. And I think we're all just going to, move forward with purpose. And as Vanessa said as well, on the auditor's side, I think they're going to be trying to expedite things as much as possible. We just want to manage expectations so nobody thinks we're guaranteeing something we can't deliver on.
Right. And as someone who, as a student, asked for many extensions, and as a professor was granted many extensions, I think they can be perfectly appropriate. And this is, I think this is a good way to handle it. I realize it's been a very challenging time. I mean, in addition to the challenges that we all have in terms of, and Ben set them out, I won't repeat them. And Vanessa, thank you very much. If do you have anything else you want to add? I don't want to cut you off.
No, I think unless there's any more questions, I think that's it.
Okay, thank you. Any more questions? Ryan?
No, sorry, it was a premature wave goodbye to Vanessa. Sorry.
If you move or blink, you get called on. Okay, thank you very much, Vanessa.
Thank you very much. Have a great night.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. And now we have our Bill. Bill, I know we asked you to come back rather than that. Thank you for that. Do you have anything, anything you want to discuss, mention or talk about up front first?
No, not really, no. I mean, I talked to Charmaine, and I'm here to answer any questions on the previous presentation that anyone may have. And I can, answer questions about the general questions about the bond market, or about anything related to interest rates as best I can, but I didn't really prepare anything for tonight.
And no need to. For anyone, we can put the slides up if they would be helpful to anyone. Okay, or Bill, if you want them, I have them right here. I had one question. We talked about it near the end, and just wanted to just clarify or ask, if you have more you want to talk about, and also other people's questions, which is, is municipal bonded the most economic way to proceed with our, not to revisit one we've already decided, but going forward, do you have any recommendations and other ways to finance the market, depending on what you would anticipate the future conditions to be?
I think that the short answer is, yeah, municipal bonds are definitely the cheapest way for the town to finance capital projects. The municipal bond market is liquid. It's very efficient. It's an efficient market. And so, that tends to provide the best interest costs for the town, provides the best transparency. We can look at the other deals that have been in the market, both in Connecticut as well as across the country. And then we can use that to help benchmark where we think rates are going to be, and benchmark the rate that the town ultimately does receive. Since the financial crisis, right, in 2008, 2009, there has been a rise of more, we'll call them direct placements with directly to investors, primarily on the banking side. But what we found is that it really is more effective. It's a cheaper way, provides the lowest interest cost to the town when it does come to the bond market and issues bonds in the bond market, rather than going directly to the banks. There may be some upfront savings in terms of issuance cost, in terms of staff time and preparing the prospectus and the credit rating that goes with that. But ultimately, it doesn't always equate to a lower cost of funds. And so that's why I say I think that the municipal bond market is the most efficient way to borrow for capital.
Just want to follow up on that. One thing that sort of piqued my interest in this last year, I guess, and Charmaine and I were talking, or maybe, I'm sorry, earlier this year rather, which is that a number of towns, when we were looking at debt service in town by town, and a number of towns would just, virtually had nothing. And I think Charmaine explained that they were using alternative, they were borrowing the money in a sense, commercial lending rather than a bonding. And that's also part of the question was, well, what do they see something that we don't?
Yeah, no, it's there's a couple of things that go into that kind of decision. I mean, it's important to first understand that from a state statute perspective, towns really can't go out and get a line of credit at a bank where you could for your business or even personally. That's not permissible under state statutes. So even when they do borrow money directly from a bank, it still has to be structured like a bond for state law purposes under the statute. But sometimes it's a credit quality issue. Sometimes the town prefer not to have a rating, and almost all our long-term borrowings do come with a credit rating, and that's not the case for the town of Mansfield. So from that point of view, I would have no fears in talking to the credit rating agencies or dealing with them at all. So I don't think we don't need to shy away from that. And so that being the one potential barrier, for accessing the competitive bond market, we certainly don't have that here. So that would not be a concern of mine at all.
Okay. Other questions? I wanted to follow up, but I don't want to monopolize. So on the so again, I know I'm asking you this, and I'm asking you to speculate first, but so why would, what would make some of these towns do this, to go into,
Well,
the short-term gains, but.
I think the first thing would be credit quality. I think that if it's an A-rated credit or maybe a lower rated credit, that would be the first consideration. I think second consideration is, again, like I said, upfront cost, having to pay for, the rating fees, having to pay to prepare the prospectus that we need to prepare to give to investors as part of the regular, procedure for general obligation bonds. There is some lead time, there's some staff time, and there's some cost there. And if it's a small issue, let's say if it's under a $2 million issue or a $2 to $3 million issue, the savings that may be obtained on the issuance cost side, when you think of the interest rate and from an all-in perspective, there may be enough savings on upfront costs that the all-in cost would make it worthwhile to go directly to a bank for a private placement. But for the elementary school project, we're talking roughly $15 million for a cost to the town. That's not the case. Is the upfront issuance costs, the savings that we might have on a direct placement are not enough to make up what would presumably be a higher interest rate. And so based on that, my recommendation would be to, issue general obligation bonds in the competitive bond market.
That's very helpful. I should know this, but I don't. The interest rates, I don't know if they're historically low, but they're incredibly low. Is that going to, as your firm estimates, as you estimate in the future, is that going to persist? But however you estimate, does that suggest any change in strategy for us?
I don't think it does. You're correct. We're not at all-time lows, but we're not far off of them. And I had provided a chart in the original presentation. Rates were somewhere around 1.5% for a 20-year bond that's structured with level principal based on the town's credit rating. That's considerably lower than the peak rate, which would have been, say 2009, which would have been north of 5.5%. Just looking at the data, I went back to 2001 and
Bill, if you wanted to share, I've made it available for you to share your screen if you choose to.
Okay. Thank you. What I can do here. There's a lot of data. I'm trying to give you an average for the 20-year period here as we go. So the average rate over the last 20 years is closer to 3.5%. So we're quite a bit below that average. That's the chart there. Thank you. So you can see where we are here on the far right-hand side. An average would be somewhere closer to 3.5. So we're quite a bit lower than that. The big concern here is inflation, and what that does to longer term rates. The the Federal Reserve is viewing inflation right now as being what they'll call transitory. So they believe it's a temporary situation, and that over time will come back closer to what their 2% target is. So I don't right now foresee that as again a reason to change the approach or the what's been discussed up to this point. I think we're still very attractive rates from a historic point of view. And then the other thing too is, with all the stimulus that's coming out of Washington, one of the things it's done is that it has been suggested that, especially as it relates to the infrastructure bill, if that does get passed, it was in part to be financed by higher taxes, right? And so, when we've got higher taxes, that tends to make tax-exempt municipal bonds more attractive. And so as a result, we've seen, a consistent flow of over 25 weeks of positive flows into municipal bond funds. So, but that is a proxy for demand. Its demand has been very strong the whole all of calendar 2021, and supply has not really kept up with it. So what that does is that tends to drive just supply and demand. When supply is down and demand is up, it drives the cost up, which is not the cost to the town, but the cost that the investor will pay. And for municipal bonds, as the dollar price goes up, yields come down. They work inversely to one another. So if investors are willing to pay a higher dollar price to get bonds because there's a scarcity of them, that equates to lower costs to the town. And we foresee that continuing, into, well into the first part of next year. So I think that again it provides for a good opportunity and good timing on the town's part.
Okay, that's very thorough. Thank you. Other questions or comments from anyone? I think I got one more. I don't think so. I'm just going to stop sharing. Well, no, this was, this is again very thorough, and thank you very much for being willing to even virtually to come back and talk to us. I appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Well, thanks again, and thanks. Oh, I'm sorry. Of course, I have one more question. And is there anything we're missing, or any suggestions we have on there may not be any on how we can be more save more money going with bonds in the future? Are there administrative things we could do, or any way to reduce it? And we don't need an answer tonight if there are. If you think
no, that's a really good question. I think the easy answer there, is usually on the credit side, right? And so what can you do to improve your credit rating and then in turn lower your borrowing costs? The town on the administrative side is adopted a number of policies over the last few years. We've always had a fund balance policy, but more recently adopted a debt policy. And so
what policy?
A debt management policy.
Right.
And so, that was viewed very favorably by the rating agencies. And so, I don't think there's anything more the town can do. The one, obstacle for the town, and there's not really much you can do here, is the demographics that take into account the students at UConn, right? And so that's helped. And we've made this point, numerous times to the rating agencies, but when you look at those wealth indices and they include the students, that tends to drag those down. And so when they do their benchmarking and they compare your per capita income, your median family income tends to be lower than the median for your credit rating. So unfortunately there's not much more you can do in that front. And then similarly with the grand list, obviously the university is tax exempt. And so, if that was a taxable property that could be revenue generating for the town, your grand list would in essence double. And certainly, Storrs Center has provided help in that regard. But again, the university has its positives and its drawbacks from a credit perspective. And unfortunately, the drawbacks are hard for you to overcome. So I would not say there's anything more the town can really do that they haven't already done, certainly on the administrative side to help improve the credit rating. I think that, just it's, as Connecticut, as the state, right, as the credit environment in the state has improved, the state's fund balance has improved. The state is making a larger pension contribution. And because their tax receipts are up, that helps the town here. And so I think, again, that provides a good reason to issue soon, while the state is not a drag on the credit rating for the town, whereas 3-4 years ago, that wasn't the case. But no, I wouldn't, there's nothing that comes to mind that the town could be doing in addition to what it's already done to help improve its credit rating and therefore its borrowing cost.
Okay, so we also, the legislation changed last year, so we're also I think one of 4 towns, Ben would know offhand, or Ryan, we're one of 3 or 4 towns that gets an expanded pilot, which is a
Right.
decent amount of money. Is that so that that can help offset the fact that much of our property is untaxable, but we can't tax it rather.
No, that's a very good point. And again, that wasn't the last time we came to market in 2019, that wasn't in place, and now it is. So that will certainly help. That will definitely help. It's not enough where it would create necessarily positive rating pressure or rating momentum for a higher rating, but it definitely helps offset that reliance on the state for additional revenue.
Okay, thank you. That's great. Unless anyone has any questions, I don't see any. Thank you very much. Thanks again.
Okay, my pleasure.
Thanks. Good night.
All right.
Okay, that was very helpful. We're at the end. Well, I guess the next step is any communications. I had one suggestion, one question about future agenda items. But first, do we have any other communications or anything you wanted to review from me? I think you're on mute, but that's okay. You're shaking your head, so
No, I don't. I'm sorry.
So now for future agenda items, one is, do you think the community center will, I'm sorry, the Parks and Recreation, do you think they'll have the numbers, the information they need in time to, have a meaningful discussion for in November, our next meeting?
That's what we're striving for.
Okay, so we should keep that as the first agenda item then, or a agenda item?
At this time, I would. The screen I'm on, I can't see if Charmaine's head is, shaking violently this way or anything. If it's not, unless there's some late breaking news that I'm not privy to, I think we're still on track for that, Peter.
So there'll be some, we're still piecing together the systems. Just so that we're clear about what we're talking about with the ERP transition. And I think we shared this in August. I don't know, it's a bit of a blur. I think I attributed the experience to chronic pain when I spoke to Ryan most recently. We exist in 2 different systems. So finance will have to do more lifting with Park and Rec to help them come to understand their numbers, simply because we're living in 2 different systems, meaning the largest amount of funds associated with the budget, salary and benefits. And that's in the old system, admins. We're in phase 3 of the ERP transition, which is HR and payroll, which is, we're trying to configure the munis to speak to admins, which is the old system. And then you have the current expenditures that are in fiscal year 21-22 that are in munis. So we'll have to marry them. So if this is going to be the first meeting of November, then Ryan, we're going to have to get together sooner rather than later to try and marry the 2 data sources to provide the information.
I don't want to put it off indefinitely, but having said that, I mean, we just heard earlier tonight how stressed out, just how many tasks you're doing. This is important, but it's also not, you know,
I-
we can
I
wait,
think-
if I don't want to jam you up even more.
Thank you. But I think my question really is, what specifically are you looking for? And then we can go and mine the data to accommodate what the end goal is versus in the past, they would come up with whatever it is that they wanted to speak to, whether it was silver sneakers or whatever, and then we would assist them on that front. But if they haven't been given, they meaning Park and Rec, specifically Jay or Ryan, given specific direction on what exactly you're looking for, then it means that I need to build out like all data sources to be able to provide them with their entire picture, which is a lift. It is.
Right, so in Al and Ben or anyone else, you know, could certainly, you know, fill in or contradict or whatever, but I think at least my expectation is they'll come to us with specifics on how they're gonna, you know, how they're gonna address the deficit. Not, I mean, we all start from generality, so I'm not in any way criticizing the earlier presentations. As you know, not only do they have a lot of other emergencies with COVID, but also, you know, they were working through it. But I think now's the time for them to tell us, okay, we've looked at the data, we've talked to other towns, whatever, and at least for some of these issues, this is what we're thinking. And then, you know, when one ask to us is, you know, okay, how can we, you know, how can we help in terms of that area? So I'm looking, and again, others please, you know, talk. I'm looking for them to come to us with specifics on what they're going to do about, you know, what they think they can do about the deficit. And it may not be 100% closable, but the specifics of what they are proposing to do in the future.
So
or do
strategic
now.
thinking, not necessarily a full-on financial plan.
Well, not too strategic, not too general. We've done that, and that's useful and necessary. I think, you know, but I think it's also good. Okay, you know, we've done some strategic things. And they have. I mean, and they've come to us with some of that over the year or for the last year or so. But I think now's the time. We're getting close to the time for them to come up with specific proposals that they want to do or already are implemented. They don't necessarily need our permission for a lot of this. So the more specifics from them, in my mind, the better. But Al and Ben first, what are your thoughts? Well, Ben has his hand up.
I agree. I think we have, unless things have changed about the understanding of what's going on, I think we have a pretty clear perspective on that. Last time we met, Jay was new in his role, and we wanted to give Jay time to figure stuff out as the director and give the folks who had shifted around when that transition happened time to implement some of the recommendations that they had come up with. And so I think I mean, I guess there's two possible outcomes to this. One is that we sort of give feedback to the department for things that they are planning on doing differently, or we change our perspective and policy about to what extent we want to subsidize into the future the community center. It could be a combination of the two things, but I think the council's made fairly clear its opinion on that matter as it relates to silver sneakers, which is that given the demographics of silver sneaker recipients, in the sense that they are not all Mansfield residents and are not all people who are of low income. In fact, most of them are state retirees who are in a better financial position as retirees than most of the seniors in the state or in the town, that we would prefer to issue a subsidy to aid low-income seniors in a different way if we are to subsidize their participation in the town and in the community center. I mean, I think that's essentially what we said as a committee several months ago. And I think it's essentially what the what the council has said several different times in different ways. And so all of which is to say, I think I agree, Peter, that my hope is that this meeting will be where the Parks and Recs department comes and says, here's some things we've tried, here's where we think we can get to, or we aren't going to be able to get better than this, and so we'd like to, if the council wishes to subsidize the program, here's how much it would cost in taxpayer dollars of a subsidy, and then the decision's up to us about whether to do it or not. But none of us know how to run a gym particularly well, and so that's why we're looking to hear from Parks and Recs about what they're doing differently about it. Does that make sense?
Does to me. Al?
Yeah, Peter, I agree, and Ben, I agree with both of you. That's my recollection of the past meetings, both here and at full council. I think that basically I agree to give them the direction of coming to us with what they think, yeah, can work, and maybe what can't work, but I'd like to see that from them. And you guys did a great job. I can't really add too much more.
And you want that at the finance committee or at town council? I'm thinking town council would want to see and hear.
Well, I know at least when Tony's on the call, I know, originally, and I think, the idea is let's go through town finance committee first and then go to town council, to vet it out or I don't, if there's an election coming, but, presumably, given the number of people on the ballot, most of us will be returning, but leave that aside for a second. I think unless Tony wants to, have it all done at town council, I think we'd go through the finance committee. And one thing too, it can be, somewhat daunting to say, okay, what's your financial recovery plan, if that's even the term for everything, but some people say, chunk it out with maybe what is your proposal for silver sneakers specifically? And yes, I think we all understand that, it's ultimately the town council's job to decide what, if any, subsidy, if that's what's needed, but we're not the experts on what would work best necessarily. So it's not simply, it's absolutely pointing out the financial ramifications, which they've pretty much done. But then saying, okay, and this is our suggestion for what we do with silver sneakers, and this is why. And the more specifics on that, I think the better it is for us to be able to, talk with them, but also present, our recommendation as well to the town council. So, maybe just, maybe that's one of the major issues. Maybe that's the one to start with, that since it will drive a lot else. And I'd rather have that discussion. And I think I heard that from Bill, from Ben and Al as well. I'd rather have the discussion when they have that plan rather than just a general discussion. That was very helpful, but we've done that.
Yeah.
But if that means doing it in December rather than November to make it effective, that's okay. I mean, you guys have a ton on your plate, and the goal is not to add something that we could do in another month and jam you up.
Peter, I just wanted to chime in. I apologize for the competing noise. We're getting close to the witching hour in our particular household here,
I
but
didn't even hear it. That's all right.
yeah. I did want to let you know though that a couple things. Parks and Recreation is working on a presentation that the target audience is the full council, and that'll be kind of the programmatic update, check-in, strategic thinking sort of piece that kind of ties in with the general department by department updates that you all have been provided on kind of like a monthly basis. So Parks and Rec was kind of next in the queue. And then as we've been talking about, the plan is obviously to have a meeting specific or an audience specifically with the finance committee once the various reports are available for us to see exactly where things stand. I mean, Jay and company have in-house numbers that can often, as I understand it, be quite a bit different than properly reconciled numbers from finance, and so we obviously want to be more accurate and base our discussion on more accurate figures. And so it is a little, jarring to try to pull all that together, in relatively, compact period of time, consolidated period of time, once we can get the appropriate reports out of Munis. And that's what we're targeting for November. But I think, there's probably a lot of discussion we can have, and it might be better had with the council as far as that, that strategic piece and what we're working on. And we can obviously drill down into the finances once those reports are available, as soon as they're available, with the finance committee.
Okay, thanks. Tony, do you have any thoughts on that?
I'm a little bit confused. First of all, there's never been, in all the years we've talked with the Parks and Rec about this, there's never been a real solution except to make the decision about, do we support, I mean, I think Ben said this, do we support it directly from the general fund? Or do we run some risks with losing members by making it harder or easier for certain groups of people to belong? So my first question is there any news about, does anybody have a new idea that's going to make a difference compared to all the stuff we've heard so far?
And I guess, oh, go ahead.
I was going to say that we, and I use the collective we, a lot of the brainstorming is coming out of Parks and Rec, but the goal is very much to present on some new ideas, some new avenues to explore, so that essentially, as we've talked about many times, Jay and I, that our strategy can't be, just hope for a better result. We need to try to change things in a way that, it might not be successful, and that's fine too, but we need to make sure that we're things that have some reasonable likelihood of generating a different result. And of course, the persistence of COVID-19 has not helped matters. But, we want to gear up to really come out of this with a full head of steam. And of course, until we have some of the reports we're waiting on, it's not really clear where we are right now in relation to what we projected when we built this year's budget. You may recall that we essentially figured on the first half of the fiscal year being, in large part a continuation of where it had been in terms of, a pandemic suppressed level of membership and overall visitation. And so I don't know that where we are right now is necessarily far off from where we thought we would be when we built the budget. But at the same time, we want to make sure, and this is what I've talked about with Jay many times, we want to make sure that we assuming things stay on the positive trajectory that they seem to be on in terms of the pandemic at the moment, that we really end the FY 21-22 budget year strong.
All right, I'm going to make a wild and weird suggestion. Pandemic aside, the real cost, structural cost to the town has been caused by the state by creating Silver Sneakers and depriving our community center of substantial revenue. So I would like to know if we could just explicitly say that we are going to use some of the increased state revenue we're getting on the new pilot to subsidize programs that are not available for Silver Sneakers and are therefore they're used by the community as a whole.
Instead of Silver Sneakers, or in addition to?
We increase our subsidies to the community center because the state has deprived us of adequate revenue. So the state's going to give us some more money. Let's use it to replace the money we are losing by Silver Sneakers.
But would you, right, okay. And
so it means an increase in the subsidy. And what I'm saying is, let's just bite that bullet and do it.
the only thing, I mean, I agree I mean, largely, well, I mean, I think, and this is just, you know, I may be anal about this, but what I like is for the community center, I mean, for Parks and Rec, when they have the information, if it's not next month, fine, is to come to us with a very, you know, specific proposal on silver sneakers. You know, this is not what we think we might do in the future that could work, but this is our recommendation. We keep it, and we, you know, and here's strategies to still increase membership, even with silver sneakers, and here's how much, if any, of increased support we'll need from the town. Or we recommend, you know, not keeping it, just as you are not keeping it, and here's why we think that would work. Whatever their recommendation is, I'm not trying to push it in any direction. I just want them to make a very specific recommendation as to what they'd like us to do.
But what I'm suggesting, Peter, is that we
Yeah.
take an initiative, that we at finance, and instead of letting them come to us and say, just give us more money, that
Right.
on our end, we take the initiative as part of figuring out how to use this new money we're going to get, that we're going to replace losses caused by the state. It's a weird suggestion. I have no idea.
No, it's
what-
not weird at all. It's just but Ben.
So since we built the community center, so two things. First of all, just to continue this line for a second, since we built the community center, the council has directed, the Parks and Rec department has implemented, the town manager has prioritized the self-sufficient nature of that building, that we operate that building like a business. We charge people to use it. It's a membership club like anything else. And, you know, if there were a gym in Willimantic with a pool owned by a private corporation, we would compete with them directly for clients. And that it has been the sort of mantra of the department. I have no idea, and there has been certainly years of conflict on the council about how successful we have actually been in that endeavor, right? People have disagreed about how much the town is subsidizing the facility. From an ideological perspective, I think it would be a very interesting exercise for the town to reconsider that priority. That in fact, the community center, maybe as it enters its 20th year, should become more of a community center and less of a membership club. Just as a town resident who hasn't been a member of the community center since I was a kid, I find it that I never access it, and that when I think about, oh, this would be fun, that would be fun to do, that I'm constantly reminded that I'm not a member, and it's difficult to access classes for kids and the gym or the pool or other things. So I think it's something we ought to revisit. It's a much bigger conversation though than silver sneakers versus not silver sneakers and the current revenue issues that we have there. From a process perspective, the finance committee is concerned about the ongoing revenue loss. I think what we ought to do as a committee is to help give feedback to the Parks and Rec department about whether they're on the right track for mitigating the existing revenue loss. And then if we decide, I think as a committee, hey, we want to ask the council to revisit this much broader issue, then we should. And by the same token, if we want to ask the council to consider to end the silver sneakers program and go back to asking those who are eligible for it to purchase a membership instead, or and as Tony said, risk losing them to a silver sneakers facility somewhere else, then maybe we ought to do that too. But besides that, like I don't think anyone on the council needs to give super specific feedback about the day-to-day operations of the center. That's, you know, and so it's good to hear what departments are doing, and we ought to be able to hear about that, but we don't need to tell them we don't think that offering this class is going to help people get in the door. But that we should hear a progress report with if staff have come up with a recommendation for silver sneakers in particular, we should hear it. If they have decided look, COVID is still affecting our business so much that we really can't accurately make a recommendation on this program, then we need to hear that. And if the reality of the situation is that staff have decided, look, this program's going to operate at a loss as long as we keep operating it. It's up to the council whether they want that loss to continue or not. Then that's the thing that we ought to hear from this update. But aside from that, I think I don't know that we need to do more than that as a finance committee right now.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's, and hopefully that's helpful, will be helpful to Parks and Rec too. And I guess the only thing I would emphasize, or maybe, I don't know if it's a slightly different take or not, is that the broader discussion of such as like what Tony was talking about, I think is absolutely an issue for the council to hear. It doesn't need to go through us, and but I think the next best step for us would be when Parks and Rec has the information. I really want not a series of options. I mean, no, I'm sorry. Series of options is always helpful, but only if it comes with, and here's our recommendation that we've thought out, and here's why. So it doesn't mean that we understand that ultimately it's our decision, but you're the finance experts and they're the experts overall on this area. So I would like the report to us to be, we're not asking them to guarantee anything. No one can, but to give us what they think, what they recommend to us on how to close the budget gap. And silver sneakers might be a good place to start, because it's also where it will drive so much of the other discussion in what, if any, subsidy. I mean, if they recommend that we get rid of it, fine, tell us why and we'll consider it, and the opposite. So, and that doesn't sound like, and this is not a criticism of them or anyone, it doesn't sound like they're going to be ready for that recommendation, whatever they want to, by November, because they may not have all the information or just haven't thought about it in that term. But I would rather not have the next meeting with finance with them to be simply an update. That should go to the town council. The more specifics, the more useful the meeting will be, I think, the finance committee.
Peter, I think the game plan that I've been formulating with Jay mirrors pretty spot on what you're describing. I guess when I was talking about the reports that we're hoping would be available for the finance committee to review with some proper, context provided by staff, I guess I wasn't necessarily thinking that in one sitting, because we can all see how quickly, these meeting blocks are taken up, how quickly time flies. I was hoping to have the actual reports available in November so they could be reviewed, perhaps some preliminary discussion, but the sort of, I guess that piece of kind of drilling down into recommendations of things that could be changed, et cetera, deviating from past practice, policy changes, et cetera, that improve the financial situation, that probably would be the focus of a future finance committee meeting. It's just, I look at the long block you have before a town council meeting, that's a lot to try to get through if you're also digesting the financial reports themselves. So I was envisioning this would be a two-step process, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
It's up to Al and Ben as well. Well, more so, this is 2-to-1, but I think the next meeting with Parks and Rec at finance should be when they have the data and have had the time to, coordinate, and they come to us not with a specific recommendations, not so much, I mean, we start with options, and for them to say, okay, here are the 3 options, here are the pluses and minuses, and we think option C is the best. That's what we recommend, and here's why. I don't think until we get that recommendation, it doesn't matter what, it is what it is, and that's fine. Then summaries and sort of updates are important, but those should go to the town council. I think the most useful thing we can do on the finance committee is get the specific recommendation, ask questions, see if we have any input for them to go back to, or if not, then move that issue to the town council. I don't know if others agree with me, but that's, Al or Ben.
I agree. I don't want to rush a presentation without the full picture. So if that means December instead of November, that's fine with me.
So I was just gonna say, if it's helpful, you know, Brian just spoke to financial statements. We won't have the town's overall quarterly financials available in November, but if we need to do the deep dive into Park and Rec, we can pull their financial statements together. We can do that and provide that for
And I don't
the
even
basis
know-
of their strategic thinking, if you will.
And I mean, that would be great, but I don't even know how, you know, if that's necessary for their recommendation. Let's assume the recommendation, because it's such a significant part of the gap, the problem is silver sneakers. So their recommendation obviously has to be ultimately informed by finances, but they've done a ton of work on this as you have. So if they came to us, you know, I mean, they need the financial information for that. I know they have, you know, they've had a lot of it over the years. I'm really interested in what is their recommendation, what to do with silver sneakers as a way to close the, you know, the gap. And I don't know if they need, I mean, you know, it's not a rhetorical, I have no idea if they need more information and more time than up to November to look at that. If they do, fine. But, you know, I guess I'd like to see a very specific plan for that, that they, you know, with their recommendation. And I don't know how much additional financial work they would request from you guys, but you would have a better sense.
Peter, in a way, here's what I see as the problem. You've got, I don't think it's up to the staff to make a major policy recommendation. They can give us a series of options, perhaps, but you can't ask them to tell us what to do. You can,
Okay, go ahead.
so I think that at some point we need to signal to the staff some of the things that we are willing to consider, so that among their options will be those. And I think among the things that we need to say we are willing to consider is the consequence of getting out of the Silver Sneakers program, mechanisms or necessity for increased support from the general fund, and whatever else they can come up with. But those are two things which I think they have to have a hint from here, and maybe from the finance committee rather than first before it goes to the council, in order so that the range of proposals is wide enough. Frankly, from my perspective, I would like to see recommendations from this committee to go to the council rather than the other way around. I have a feeling you guys, and this, I don't mean to be mean about this, but you're passing the buck. And I think it's your job as a finance committee to make recommendations to the council.
Right. No, I'm going to absolutely, I mean, that's fine. You're not being mean. I'm going to absolutely push back on that, because here's why. Because I think, and it's not, I mean, so much the first, I do think, I mean, I have to do it all the time. I think it is any department's job to make a not simply to lay out the options and ask, what do you want to do? And we've had a lot of that, and that's useful. Yes, it is our decision as a council, but everyone knows that. But I want to know what their preference is, because they're the experts. So I think that's just what goes on, I think, pretty much everywhere, which is you get a set of options. But if I ever presented a set of options and said, well, it's up to you to decide which one, I don't think that would go over well, because yes, of course it's the dean's decision or whatever. But if I'm the expert, I want to know the recommendation. And I have a lot of confidence in our staff that they'll do that. And I don't think it's so much passing the buck, because the buck ends with the town council through the finance committee, but it's getting the finance committee, you know, the best information. Because having them do the initial work of this is what we recommend among the options is incredibly valuable. And that's what we need to hear. And then we ask questions, we make our final decision. But I think we need to, I'd like to get a recommendation, whatever it is. And I think we've provided them, they've provided us, we provided them parameters, and you've just helpfully done so tonight as well. So I mean, again, it's up to the rest of the committee as well. But I don't think it's inappropriate. In fact, I think it's usual to ask not only for the options, but also for their recommendation, and then we'll ask questions and vote as we think appropriate. Ben, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I think we've gotten a menu of options already about the Silver
Yeah.
Sneakers program specifically. That was months ago. Finance or the Parks and Recs department has had an opportunity to try some of them out. It would be good to get a status update about how they've gone. And I think it would be useful, given the progress that they've made, to get an assessment from the finance department, from the Parks and Recs department about, here is where we think this could go, given the information that we now have. Here's the proportion of our loss that we think is still being caused by COVID. And here's where we're still losing from Silver Sneakers, from the structure of Silver Sneakers. So I sort of agree with both of you that it would be good to get a recommendation or an assessment or whatever from the experts about what we could reasonably expect to be a non-COVID revenue picture from this program continuing. And I think if, to the extent that staff is comfortable making a recommendation, then they need to. But if the recommendation is, or if the policy decision the council is going to make is going to be something as sort of foundational or fundamental or ideological or whatever, is what I offered up as a way to reimagine the Parks and Rec department, then I agree with Tony. I think it needs to be council driven, and we ought to make a recommendation to the council that we'd like to explore it and have the council agree to set that direction, and we can sort of go from there. But I think they're two separate questions, right? Like, if frankly, if Silver Sneakers is not in the situation at the community center, given the pandemic, is not a solvable problem without a fundamental redesign of the town's philosophy when it comes to parks and recreation, then I think we know our answer for the Silver Sneakers program moving forward, right? Like, then if it can't be solved, then it's a council decision, keep it or get rid of it. I think we ought to consider the more fundamental issues separate and apart from the revenue problems that are happening, because I think they're an important, how should we operate as a town conversation irrespective of the revenue. But so I think what I'm trying to say in terms of what I would like to see from staff whenever this report happens, is to get a sort of full picture, as full as we can get, about what the revenue issues are and what are driving them and what mitigation measures have been taken. And then if there's a recommendation for how to proceed that's different than what we've already told them to do in the budget, that we hear it. And if there isn't, and the recommendation is to stay the course and continue, that we decide as a committee whether we want to recommend that the council take a more fundamental look at Parks and Rec programming at the community center and overall, and how the town pays for it with the general fund versus user fees, and sort of go from there. Does that make sense?
It's just sort of a good, sort of like, I don't like the term really, keep within our lanes, but right, in the finance committee, our charge, at least here, is to work with Parks and Rec on addressing getting a concrete plan for addressing the financial issues, the larger and ultimately more important issues of the role of, we all support the community center, but what its proper role and how much of it, as Tony well pointed out, how much of a subsidy, if necessary, that's an important discussion, and that should happen at the council level. But I think getting the answers and recommendations for some of these financial issues, that's our remit, I think, our lane. And then so if they say, Parks and Rec come back and say, here are 4 options, A, B, C, D, we recommend D for the following reason. We don't just then, as a finance committee, go up and say, okay, they said D, we're just passing along the information. We'll say, they say D, we think D is also correct for the additional reasons, or no, we like that input, but we'll go with B as our recommendation to you. That's where we come in. But I don't think we can do our job well without the experts telling us what they not only think, but also what they recommend.
So Jay, Jay has been out a bit. He's trying to use up some end of year leave. He'll be back tomorrow. I've already set up time to meet. I think you've given us a lot to digest and as far as charting the best course forward. What I would recommend, if you guys are amenable to this, and I think for a variety of reasons that were, fairly well articulated tonight, November may prove to be premature or a bit too ambitious. But I would like for us to keep that a little bit open-ended at this particular moment, just to see, because it may come together
Sure.
a bit more expedited. But I appreciate the committee's understanding and flexibility, so that if, we communicate a message back that, and go out to all you that we need a little bit more time and meet in December or whatever, that you're open to that.
No, and none of this should be, any frustration, this is not a criticism of Parks and Rec or anything. I think they're working hard on a very difficult problem. But I think we've outlined what would be useful to the Finance Committee in the larger, broader discussion for town council, which I think their recommendation to us on closing the budget gap will be a big part of how Parks and Recreation and all of us think about, all the whole town, about where to go in the future, including whether it's a lot more subsidies or whatever, getting rid of silver sneakers, whatever it is. I think that's how we can be helpful. And we also definitely do not want to contribute to an incredibly demanding round of work that the finance department and you guys, you, Ryan, and all of you have already in completing, the transition and audit reports.
Appreciate that sentiment.
So, any other comments on this? So one thing I know what we talked about some, is the importance of sort of explaining just, the issues going on. Is there anything else, do you think that was fully discussed earlier tonight? In terms, with our outside auditor, were there other points you wanted to make in terms of the work of the department and meeting, somebody, with software, that's a minor term, as well as the federal funds and things like that. Is there anything else you wanted to, talk with us about or tell us?
No, I feel supported. I do, and that you all heard me. The staff they're putting in some hours. We're all putting in some hours to try and keep things moving along. And I'm just grateful that you all are appreciative of that effort, because it is a lot. And it's never a good time to do an ERP transition. Never a good time. And so this just seems to be the trifecta of pain. Who would have thought in 17 and 18, when the contract was signed, that we would be in this minutia of the pandemic and all the other things that go with it. So I'm just grateful that you all, recognize sort of the stuff that's going on here. And we're just going to keep plugging along.
Okay, thank you. Anything? So we'll decide. We'll decide in a couple of weeks. But what Parks and Rec will tell us. So you guys will tell us if they're ready for this type of presentation in November. If not, fine. We'll schedule it for December or later in November, whatever. Well, December probably. Whatever works out for them. So we don't know. Do we have any other agenda proposals or items that people would like to discuss? Or Tony, is there anything else you'd like to see on the agenda? Okay. All right. Any other comments, Ryan or Charmaine? Okay, this has been very helpful. I appreciate it. And so we'll close the meeting at 7:26 p.m.
Move to adjourn by me.
Thank you. Al, you gonna second?
Yeah, I second. I just took
Yeah, I'm
take up a mute.
kidding. That's fun. Okay, so we adjourn. Let's do 7.
Good night, everyone.
Good night,
Good night.
everyone. Thank you for your time. Thanks.